Hey tubes, welcome back. Hey, I have my wheel horse here, as you can see. I got that 520 LXI Toro Wheel Horse. We've run into a problem with it. The Kawasaki engine, it seemed like I was having some problems with the power on it. And the minute you would put a load on it, say the mower deck, or you'd put on, say, the hydraulics or whatnot, on the hydrostatic drive, it seemed like it was having a problem with the power. So it ran like it was running 3/4 throttle. I thought I was having a carburetor problem, something of that nature. Checked the carburetor, found out carburetor had a lot of fuel smell to it, and also the exhaust smelled like it was kicking some fuel out of it. Well, as we were tearing it apart, here's a couple things you might want to look at when you look into this, because this engine seems like it's very, it's a powerful engine, but by the time I realized what was going on, it was only firing on one cylinder, but I'll show you what it was doing. All right, guys, so looking at this side of the tractor, I went ahead and I've already taken this ignition plug off, this coil. First thing I did was I checked this spark plug, and when I pulled the spark plug out, the thing I noticed about it is that the spark plug was very much fouled up. It had a lot of black goop on it. It looked really dirty, and found out that it smelled really strong of fuel, and it actually had a little bit of residue of fuel on it. So I looked down on the inside, and I don't know if you can see down in there. I doubt you can in this, but down in the inside it was really dirty and fouled up as well. So what I figured I would do is take this spark plug out and take the other one out and just make sure I'm getting spark. And that's what I did. So I'll show you here on the other side the same thing we've done. Alright guys, as you can see, I'm on the right hand side of the mower, and if you look down, this spark plug doesn't look as bad. It has a little bit of a white residue on it. Tells me it's burning a little hot, and that's what it seemed like to me. But the next thing I did was, in order to ground this off, since this cable is so short and it's hard to see when you're starting it, I added some jumper cables on, and I just clipped on right here, and that'll ground it off to the tractor. I'm also going to do that on the other side, and I'm going to show you exactly how the spark was working. And by the way, the fuel line, I just went ahead and turned it off so the fuel wouldn't pump into it. I first thought that my problem was my fuel pump, but a fuel pump or fuel filter, the pump I could hear running, so I figured the fuel filter was clogged. Well, come to find out that wasn't it. It looks like it is actually part of this ignition. So the next step I did is I grounded these off, and then I'm going to turn the key over and show you what I see. Alright guys, I'm back over here on the left hand side. You can look real close. Hopefully the camera will pick this up. I'm going to turn the engine over, and you're going to see that this side isn't going to spark. No spark on this side, but when we make our way around to the other side and we go to turn it on, so after doing this, I then swapped the spark plug from this side to the other side, knowing that this spark plug was still good, checked it on the other side, and found that it was actually not firing over there as well. So I took the other spark plug, moved it over here, and it started sparking just fine. So then I took both coils and I flopped them around, plugging the one in over here to see whether or not it was something in the wiring coming up, making sure that that was, maybe at fault. Found out the wiring was fine, because when I moved the other ignition coil over, it didn't fire either over here. This one fired fine on the other side. So it tells me that this ignition coil was going bad. But again, when you're running this, and if you're just pulling a trailer around the yard or something, you're not going to be able to tell on this engine that there is really any kind of problem, because most of the time when I'm towing a trailer or something like that around the yard, I'm not running full throttle. There's no reason for it. So what I have found out is that I could have probably been running this for a while with only one cylinder producing power. So we're going to actually swap out this ignition coil here shortly, and then we'll go from there. First thing we're going to do is we're going to disconnect the neutral side of this so we can kill the circuit. Take this out and make sure that we disconnect that. We've already got the key out of the ignition, so that saves us a little bit. So we're going to go to the next step after this. Alright guys, I went on Amazon. I bought a new ignition coil here. I'm going to have to desolder these wires off these points, but I'm going to show you, if you get the maintenance manual for this FD620D engine, it'll show you from Kawasaki the actual ohms that this needs to be on the different points. So I'm going to do a test from A to C, because that was the issue I had on mine. The numbers were off the chart. So I'm going to do A to C and check the ohms. It should be anywhere between 10.4 and 15.6. You check your ohms, should be around 14.6, 14.5, somewhere around in there, and this is looking really good. Again, that's to the spark plug end and going down to point A. They label this A and this is C. So this looks like this is going to be good. We're going to go ahead and we're going to get this remounted over here on the tractor and see if that doesn't help. All right, if you look here, here's the 2 bolts that hold this onto the engine. You're going to need, especially if you're on this particular engine and this setup, you're going to need an 8mm wrench, and you get that in there and you just break those free. They shouldn't be too hard to break free, and loosen this up, and we're going to take this out. Now that you're on to this point, you got 2 cables here. One's going to be a little bit smaller, one's going to be a little bit bigger. It's the same as what you have on your coil over here. You have a smaller one, a bigger one. We're going to have to desolder those. I'll go ahead and desolder those. All right, I've gone ahead and desoldered these tips. Now I'm going to clip these pins back on like so. Once it wiggles on, I'm going to then mount it back up to the engine, and when we come back we'll have it already mounted to the engine and ready to go. Installed the new ignition coil. I've hooked the battery back up, hooked a ground onto it. Let's see if we get spark from this. Okay, that's showing me we got spark. The ignition coil is our problem. We're going to torque the spark plugs back into the correct torque. And we're also going to make sure the gap is correct on the spark plug, so that way it's sparking and running correctly. I'll show you those numbers here and here next. All right, guys, spark plug information for this Toro 520 LXI. It's on page 29 of your manual. You want to make sure that your gap on your spark plug is at 0.024 to 0.028 inches. I have right here, I'm going to go with 0.025, just a little bit bigger. And then down here, you want to make sure you set your torque wrench to 17 foot-pounds. You want to make sure that that spark plug is put in with the right foot-pounds. If you put it in with too much, it's going to possibly strip the threads. Then you're going to have to do some replacement there. But you want to make sure it's not too loose, because if you do, you could have also some pressure problems. And I have my torque wrench here. It is actually set to 17. All right, as you can see here, I've got the spark plug. This is my depth of 0.025. I want to make sure that I have the right gap in here. This gauge tells me whether or not it is. It's perfect. It's touching both sides. So that tells me I have the right gap. You want to make sure that that is correct, or you're not going to get the right spark. Next, we're going to take this spark plug. We're going to put it down inside the cylinder head here, and we're going to tighten it down, make sure it's 17 foot-pounds of torque. If it's more than that, you could strip the threads on the inside, or you could actually strip out your spark plug. You want to make sure it's the right amount of torque, because also that affects whether or not the pressure is right inside the cylinder head. And you want to make sure you have the right pressure as well. All right, guys, I have it all put back together. One of the things you want to make sure, especially on this one, on something I did, I turned the fuel back on so we can pump fuel back in. It's probably going to take a little bit to get it started, but we're going to go ahead and put the choke on. I usually put my throttle at about 3/4 throttle, half to 3/4. Put that on. We're going to turn the key and we're going to get this thing going. Here we go. That actually started better than I thought, and man, does it sound better. Originally, when we were starting it, I kind of explained it. It sounded more like it was at that throttle. It sounded like it had that amount of throttle to it, and that it just couldn't get up the power. It sounded smooth. It didn't really vibrate too much, but that's kind of how it sounded. But now, listen to this thing. So we're back. back up and running. This thing idles wonderfully. If you have the Kawasaki FD620D, they're in the John Deere Gators. I know they're in the John Deere 425 mowers. That engine, if you have a problem where you feel like there's not enough power, you kick the PTO in, and the PTO just doesn't seem, it bogs it down. It seems like it really bogs down. Start checking your spark plugs and see if that's not the issue first. Don't jump into the carburetor and start messing with it. Check your